On our program today, we have a diplomat poet, or perhaps a poet-diplomat, Abhay K, and we'll be talking to him about his poetry, his other writings, and of course his career as a diplomat. Abhay, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Let's start at the beginning. You're growing up in Nalanda district. What was that like?
Oh, Nalanda, I have very sweet memories of the village I was born in. Right. It was a village by the river, Pamar, and used to be full of orchards and grandma. So these two have stayed in my memories, grandma and orchards, and playing in the orchards with grandma. So various associations I have in fact written about in my memoirs, which were published as River Valley to Silicon Valley,
right, about
my memories, sweet memories.
So you've been a voracious reader. You know, you've been reading all kinds of literature, right from Munshi Premchand to some of the greats, Kabir and all, yes, including Kurtze and some of the best in the world. Now, when did this start? My
father was a teacher, you know, and
in a primary school.
In a primary school, and we used to have lots of books at our home.
Right.
So I started, you know, exploring them, and slowly I got more curious to explore new and more new books. And once I got into the world of books, it was an unending journey.
You never experimented with writing as a child or even as a youth?
No, never. I mean, there was the writing as a thing didn't occur to me that I should myself start writing. Writing came much later to fill a void, or to
when you were posted.
When I was posted in Moscow.
Right.
And to remember something, something which was so beautiful, so pristine and pure, that I wanted to record it, record the happy memories of my childhood and the struggles and the adventures I traveled.
So was it just nostalgia, or the fact that you were displaced away from your childhood in such a big way that it kind of became clearer to you and you could see it?
Nostalgia always happens when it comes with displacement.
Right.
So when you have something beautiful lost forever, because even if you return to the same place, the place is not more the same, not anymore the same,
that
because the people have moved on. The grandma is not there anymore, and the orchards are withering.
And they're not as mysterious as.
And they're not as mysterious because the innocence as a child you carry has gone.
Right.
So the romance is lost, and then the places feel so different. Then the nostalgia is born. You want to preserve that, what used to be, and I think writing comes from that.
And in Karorimal College, something interesting happened in 1999, I think.
That was a turning point, because then I could see the world. I could see various students from various nations, and how beautiful it was to have them all together at one place. And I could never imagine that the world is so large, it's so vast, and when I was in Manila and had so many people together with me at one point of time, I decided that I want this to happen to me more often. And then it occurred that the only way it could happen more often is that if I joined the Indian Foreign Service and traveled the world.
So that was the conscious decision?
That was a conscious decision.
Although your father wanted you to be an IS officer?
Yes, he wanted, because he saw the world from his own perspective.
Right.
So all he could see was the district and the state capital and all. But when I could see the world from the broader perspective, my perspective changed.
And ironically, you write in English, although
yes,
a lot of poets tend to write in their mother tongue.
Yes.
Was this also a conscious choice?
Yes, it was a conscious choice to write in English for various reasons. The reason one was that English is the global lingua franca.
True.
And there are many people like me, who move from their mother tongue to English, and not only in India but all across the world. It could happen in any country, and so I I identify myself with these kind of readers and writers who have moved from their mother tongues to English, and they want to explore the world. So there is a kind of commonality between, among us.
Poetry, especially for you, is a spontaneous process.
Yes.
So when one is trying to be spontaneous, one tends to go back to one's mother tongue.
Yes. I agree with you. When you want to write in the language you speak and you use, so in the foreign service you don't speak Hindi anymore. You speak a little bit of it here and there, but your whole thinking process and your conversations with your colleagues or with your interlocutors, they're all in different.
So was
English
this also a sense of loss when you went to Moscow? The loss of your own language as well?
Yes, I mean, I lost two languages. One was the mother tongue and another was the lingua franca, I mean the acquired mother tongue, you can say. I have read somewhere that literature is born when there is intermingling of or coming together of two completely different cultures or languages, and then you sort of start or you get inspired in the creative process, or some kind of creative process starts. So coming together of, I think, completely opposites.
Would you say it's a coming together or a clashing of two? Because if it was a smooth process, then it wouldn't create the agony which is the seed of creativity.
It could be clashing, it could be coming together, but I think some kind of creative tension builds up.
Right.
It could be a clash or.
But this phase when you were in Moscow was really the most creative phase of your life.
Yes, it was. For a number of reasons. The one reason was that I had ample time. I was studying Russian language, history and literature, and I didn't have to go to the office every day. I used to just report for one day, which was the norm. And so I had.
That's a cushy job, I must say.
It's given. The time is ample time is given to you so that you can master the language well,
and also the local culture,
and also the local conditions,
yeah.
And then you can use it for the rest of your career. So that's why you go to the country to learn the language where that language is spoken.
Tell me about your first book, because it was born there.
Yes. So the first book was basically a memoir. It was the story of my own story and the story of my family and my brother particularly. How how India is moving. I wanted to tell the story of India's journey from a agrarian society, an agrarian economy to information, to becoming an information economy or information power.
Therefore, River Valley to
Silicon Valley,
right.
Through the story of my own family. So it was there were two parallel narratives. One was the narrative of my own family, and another was the narrative of the nation. How
you were barely 20 when you wrote this. When in your 20s?
In my 20s, yeah. I was 25. So.
Isn't that too early to start with an autobiography?
Oh, yes, it is. But, I told you in the beginning that it was an attempt to preserve the innocence of those years.
Right.
Because I don't think I can write that anymore, because I have moved on.
Right.
So, before you lose it, you have to write it. And at the moment, this book would be, I'm trying to republish it as a civil servant's tale. And already I get number of mails every day that when that book would be out in the market, because I think lots of people want to know the life of a civil servant and how one could become a civil servant. There
have been comparisons between your book and Adiga's White Tiger.
Yes.
Have you seen or read any of those?
I have seen some of them. See, Adiga's book and my book, they both of the books start. The stories move or start from Bihar. One starts in Nalanda, one starts in Gaya. These are neighboring districts. But Adiga's book is essentially about India's underbelly, the negative side of it.
Yeah, there is a dark element to
the
it.
darker side of the darker tinge of India, what India has become. My story also moves from the river valley from Gaya. Adiga's story moves from Gaya to Bangalore. My story moves from Nalanda to Bangalore. And but my story is about India's positive side, that how education and democracy, how good values can change lives. And it's shown. I have told the real story. Adiga's story is fictional story.
Right.
So I see that.
And yours is from the point of view of innocence. So there
Yes.
is optimism rather than
Yes.
being disillusioned
Yes.
with the way India
So
is going.
that's why I wonder sometimes that my book would be a far better book to read. Just for the youth, because they can see optimism there. They can see hope there, and that's what is needed. If you read Adiga's book, all you can see is the disillusionment and the.
But do you think that is what sells in the West, and that could be the reason why it's so popular?
Exactly. That's what that kind of books get prizes. You have to portray some sort of breaking of the order, some sort of chaos. It's a typical extension of the Orientalism, and people in the other part of the world, they have certain ideas about how they live, how they carry on with their lives, and how exoticism shapes our lives. And if you can portray that in your books, of course, I think you would be very close to an award. Or
now, moving from this sort of a book to poetry, when did poetry happen to you?
Poetry began with this book,
Right.
and part of the book is where I started writing poems. So where I could not write text anymore, prose anymore, it automatically, spontaneously started being written in poetic form. So the first, if you read River Valley to Silicon Valley, the first poem which comes during the third chapter is about which later I called as the Song of the Soul, which is that I was always here as the blowing wind or the falling leaves, as the shining sun or the flowing streams, as the chirping birds or the blooming buds, as the blue sky, as the empty space. I was never born. I didn't die.
This preoccupation with the spiritual and the long term, which of course comes through in your paintings also, and we'll talk about it later, where you trace 10,000 years of humankind and go back from when the Big Bang happened. This is quite something that fascinates you, doesn't it?
My fascination is with the wonders of the universe. Beyond the humdrum of daily life. So when somebody asks me that how old are you, I say I am 14.5 billion years old, because precisely I was born when the Big Bang happened, and or in fact you and anybody else is part of that Big Bang and part of stardust, because we were all born with the death of the stars. So it's all a matter of consciousness and the perspective. How far back can you see that? And beyond that, also the evolution of the history of mankind, because we all started in the caves 10,000 years ago, all of us, and we reached the United Nations after the Second World War. So these are kind of grand narratives I have, and with those grand narratives I try to fit in my philosophy, my poetry, my prose.
But your first book of poetry, Enigmatic Love.
Yes.
Tell us something about that.
It happened in Moscow. I was really inspired by the beauty in the streets of Moscow, whether it was nature or people, and then poems automatically flowed out of my experience in Moscow. And Enigmatic Love was something which tried to tell about what love is. It's mysteries of love, and I have a poem called Love, which is only uses 4 words, and
love, violence. No, that's
yes, it's love, beautiful silence, silent violence, violent silence, beautiful violence. So love is it's a two-edged sword. It depends how you get along with it. That's why I named the book.
That is a very
Enigmatic Love.
deeply insightful look into love. At that time, when you were writing this in 2009, what was your experience of love that made you write these kind of?
I realized that that seeds of opposites of love, lie in love itself.
Right.
And that realization made me to write these lines, because love could be very rewarding and it could be devastating. So it depends what kind of love.
So were you lovelorn then?
Of course, yes. I was.
For a lot of us, especially when we are young, poetry does come as an expression of the inner angst. But when did you know that you were a poet and not just somebody who was playing with words?
I myself started realizing what poetry means much after writing poetry. And so Enigmatic Love is, a poet, it's a personal poetry in the sense that you're writing something. We all start as poets with love, and then we some of us stay with love forever, and some of us move on. And I think that's the growth and transformation which defines a poet. So when I started moving away from personal to more
to the universal.
Right. Then I started realizing that what I was writing, and one can only see it from when you have done that.
Right.
It's a hindsight. And then you can realize that what kind of poetry you were writing. So I thought that these lines were brilliant, and beautiful silence.
Yeah, they were absolutely brilliant and beautiful. And in this at this moment, we take a short break for silence, and we'll be right back after this break.
मैंने चुनी एक नहीं 2 बेहतरीन खुशबुएं नई लक्स स्टार कलेक्शन सोप्स रेंज के लिए।
मुझे तो दोनों ही पसंद है। आपको ट्राई कीजिए नया लक्स स्टार कलेक्शन।
हेलो,
हाय।
टेल अस, क्या आप अपना डव शैम्पू लौटाएंगी? क्यों लौटाऊं?
नो चांस।
कभी नहीं। डव लौटाना मतलब स्मूथनेस लौटाना।
डव लौटाना मतलब हेयर फॉल का लौटाना।
हेयर फॉल मतलब हेयर डैमेज। नया डव सिर्फ ₹1.5 में दे 50% ज्यादा पोषण, डैमेज बालों को रिपेयर करे।
अपना डव लौटाऊं?
कभी नहीं।
नया डव शैम्पू।
वाह, इतना निखार। और मेरा देख, दाग धब्बे, धूप का सांवलापन, काले घेरे।
इधर देख, काले घेरे,
धूप का सांवलापन, दाग धब्बे।
ये सब साधारण क्रीम से नहीं, फेयर एंड लवली ट्रीटमेंट से ही जाएंगे।
फेयर एंड लवली सैशे सिर्फ क्रीम नहीं, एडवांस्ड पिंक ट्रीटमेंट है जिसका टारगेटेड असर दे एक्सपर्ट ट्रीटमेंट जैसा निखार।
एक्सपर्ट निखार सिर्फ क्रीम से नहीं, ट्रीटमेंट से आएगा। क्या समझी?
फेयर एंड लवली सैशे।
छोटी थोड़ा जल्दी उठा करो। पापा प्लीज बाथरूम जल्दी खाली करो। मम्मी देखो टेंशन मत लो तुम, करता हूँ ना कीटाणु का डिशुम डिशुम।
इसको क्या हुआ?
पेप्सोडेंट हुआ और क्या? पेप्सोडेंट के साथ पहले ब्रश करो, पैक पर जो कोड है डायल इन करो। हांगकांग जाओगे तो मिकी माउस के पास मैजिकल डिज्नी एक्सपीरियंस भी खास।
इतने धीरे क्यों, थोड़ा जल्दी करो। साथ चलना है तो पेप्सोडेंट से ब्रश करो।
डव ने एक फ्रेंड को चेहरे के एक तरफ सोप और दूसरी तरफ डव लगाने को कहा और दूसरे को सिर्फ छूकर फर्क बताना है।
दिस साइड बहुत ही ड्राई है, दिस साइड बहुत सॉफ्ट है।
ये डव है ना?
यही डव है।
डव में है 1/4 मॉइस्चराइजिंग क्रीम जो त्वचा बनाए ज्यादा सॉफ्ट और स्मूथ। डव ट्राई कीजिए और फर्क खुद देखिए।
Welcome back. We are talking to Abhay K about his poetry, and we will move on to his paintings and other works. Abhay, talking about your name from Abhay Kumar, when did you become Abhay K?
With the first book itself, I started writing with the name Abhay K. And
was there a reason behind it?
Yes, the reason was that I didn't want to limit myself with the title Kumar. And K is very interesting later. If you look at the structure of K, it begins at a point and it moves, the two lines moves towards infinity.
Right.
So the idea was that I started my writing career from a point, and I want to move towards the infinite. So that was the conscious decision, and it also stands for the first letter of Kumar. So
The concepts that you come through in your poetry are all hard-hitting, very incisive, but brief.
yes, I think it comes naturally to me, and also as I grow as a poet, I realize the importance of the economy of words. I must say maximum in least number of words, and that makes I think me to choose fewer words but stronger words, more appropriate words. This journey of realizing the value of words also happens gradually.
Right.
When I was writing my first book, I didn't realize that it just happened as a flow. I just wrote it. Now I'm rewriting it, and with that great realization that I must be very accurate in what I want to say. And in poetry also, my poems are growing pithier, and there are more there's more concentration in the words and the meanings I want to convey through them.
And yet most people feel that your poetry is very accessible, very easy to read, very easy to understand.
Yes, so is poetry of Kabir. It's one of the best best poetry I have ever read, where you say so much in so few words. One of the poems of Kabir, which is पोथी पढ़ी पढ़ी जगमुआ पंडित भया न कोई ढाई आखर प्रेम का पढ़े सो पंडित होए. It says so much without having to go through the intellectual rigor of Philip Larkin, or at the other end there is Robert Frost, who says so much without being difficult.
And again, the language is very facile.
Facile.
Right.
So there are all kind of poets.
And Robert Frost is also one of your favorites.
One of my favorite poets. There are all kind of poets. Walt Whitman is one of my favorite poets.
And so is Dinkar.
And so is Dinkar. Dinkar's Rashmirathi is especially the third part. Tirtya Sarg is one of my all-time favorites, and sometimes with friends we get together and all we do is to read his Tirtya Sarg.
And you like to keep that book with you all the time?
All the time. I keep a copy of Rashmirathi all the time, and because the words, the lines are so hard-hitting, they're so inspiring, they're so touching, that there is all rasas are there in his poems.
Absolutely.
So that's what I think that poetry is.
And which are the lines that inspire the most?
बाधा विघ्नों को चूम चूम पांडव आए कुछ और निखर सौभाग्य न सब दिन सोता है देखो आगे क्या होता है. So there are other, the whole it's in this format. The whole Tirtya Sarg of Rashmirati is in that
In fact,
format.
this is reflective in your own poetry when you talk about the rafters.
Yes.
Now, which book is this?
This is Remains.
Remains. Yes.
Yes. Fellow rafters, row on. The poem is called Row On. Row on is repeated several times. Fellow rafters in the rocky waters, row on, row on, row on. However tumultuous the river, row on, row on, row on.
Do you think you are somewhere very fatalistic?
There's a poem I have written called Man, and what I say is that what is a man but a puppet manipulated by the strings of fate? But yet only man can decide what not what he is, but what he can become. So man is manipulated by the strings of fate and keeps on swinging between hope and despair, death and immortality, and sorrow and happiness. So man's
and good and bad.
And good and bad.
Yes.
So man is, but only man has this ability among all creatures to decide his evolutionary path, his spiritual journey, or his future.
Right.
I can say it's a conscious decision. So a man is given that capability to decide, and he can choose what he exactly wants, what not he is right now, but what he could become.
In your poetic journey, what came next?
After Enigmatic Love, I had a book called Fallen Leaves of Autumn.
Right.
Which
Also based in Russia?
Also based in Russia. All poems from Russia. So autumn is a very lovely season in Russia. If you visit Russia in autumn, you will walk on the golden carpet, and golden carpet of leaves, maple leaves, and those leaves inspired me to write a whole series of poems, and I named that book Fallen Leaves of Autumn. And Fallen Leaves of Autumn talks about nature, about the inseparable relationship between the poet and the nature, that a poet can't remain indifferent to the beauty of nature, and the immense beauty of a fallen leaf, of in the season of autumn. I used to read the Leaves of Grass of Walt Whitman, and a boy comes and asks Walt Whitman that with his hands full of grass, he says, "What is grass? What is this?" And the poet can't say what is this. He says, "How can I say what is this?" Walt Whitman says that it could be. I mean, grass is something which is so extraordinary. It's something which years of evolution, million years of evolution has taken to produce something so beautiful. So I mean, the nature itself is amazing. It brings us energy every day. It inspires us with its beauty, and so on.
After Fallen Leaf, we had
Yes, after Fallen Leaves of Autumn, I had Candling the Light.
right.
So it was not light a candle, but candling the light. And many people were confused that why the wrong use of English.
No, not the wrong use, a different use of English.
Or different use of some even said that why candling the light, because generally you light a candle. So the candling the light was about making light brighter. So my metaphorical meaning was that light itself is losing its luminosity,
right,
and we have to make it brighter. And by that, what I meant was that we have to look at things in deeper ways, and see that how can we see them in a new light. It was another word for the process of enlightenment. How do you reach that stage? And that would be by making the light brighter around us.
Now this is, it reminds me of Buddha.
Yes.
And you come from that land.
Yes.
From Nalanda. Do you think this very deeply philosophical approach that you have in life has something to do with the fact that you come from the land of learning?
You always grow with the legacy you have. It could be culture, it could be history, it could be heritage. So when for the first time I visited Nalanda, the ruins of Nalanda University, so it had an amazing impact on me. I had several questions, and then I had a dialogue with the ruins. Okay. And so it became some kind of internal process, and my consciousness started transforming. So I would ask questions about Nalanda, I would read about history. So what I am is product of the ambience I have grown up in. And
is that what led you to co-write the book on the soul?
Yes. So that was, I mean, those questions come to everybody, the questions on the spirituality, right. What is life, what is death, what is happiness, what is time. All these questions are which everybody asks in one way or another way. And I also had these questions, and I tried to answer them in my own way. I thought that as there is intelligence quotient we are all born with, I believe we are also born with spiritual quotient. And spiritual quotient means the ability to see the wholeness or the oneness of the universe, the oneness of creation. In fact, you know, the word universe, I just wanted to mention, is also it's one verse,
right?
And means one. It's poetry basically. The whole universe is poetry.
And in fact, you have created an anthem to the earth.
Yes.
Which is people talk about the national anthem of various countries, but you thought of an earth anthem.
Okay. As I grew and my consciousness grew, I realized that there are only two organic wholes, and one is individual. We are independent beings, and another is the planet, which is a whole. It's a natural and organic system. So there is individual and there is planet, and we have anthems for schools, for colleges. We have all sung our school anthems, and we always sing our national anthem, and we sing national anthems of other countries. But there is not a single national anthem for our beautiful planet. I can point out the deficiency that there is no anthem for the planet, but for a poet, it's a challenge to create one. And I tried writing an anthem.
Our cosmic horses, cosmic blue pearl, all the continents and the oceans of the world. United we stand, house flora and fauna. United we stand, as species of one earth. Black, brown, white, different colors. We are humans. The earth is our home. We are humans. The earth is our home.
I wrote this anthem in 2009 and published it. It was published in my last book, Remains, but it was like a longer anthem. But when actually it was being set to music, when the words had to be turned into, the words of the poem had to be turned into lyrics, then it took lots of time to get the right words. So so then words have to fit to music,
right?
Fit to scale. So then lots of words had to be removed, some words were added, and finally it is now ready.
All for one and one for all. United we unfurl the blue marble flag. Black, brown, white, different colors. We are humans. The earth is our home. We are humans.
Abhay, again coming back to Nalanda, do you think it is ironic that, you know, Nalanda was the seat of learning where students came from all over the world, and today you go from Nalanda and you are spreading knowledge all over the world, so it's a reverse process.
Nalanda was a product of lots of people coming together. It was a symbol of Asian Renaissance,
Right.
where people from all across the world came, and because teachers were also not only from Nalanda, they came from all across the world, and then students came from all across the world. So it was not exactly that it was Nalanda was giving out everything. It was a collaborative.
Yes,
it
but
was a collaborative.
people were coming towards Nalanda.
Yes, people were coming towards Nalanda. Today, Nalanda is not there anymore. The ruins are there, and a new Nalanda University is being built, not far away from where Nalanda stood. Nalanda is being built in Rajgir, and new Nalanda University, and it will have a number of schools, including a school on Buddhism, but on several other subjects like international relations, information
And you
technology.
triggered this by writing your article.
By biotechnology. I might have. I can't say. It's lots of ideas and inspiration keep on floating in the air, and and maybe even somehow indirectly or directly, somebody got inspired from that. I would say that.
Now, we've been talking about your life and your poetry through the various cities that you have loved, Russia,
Moscow.
Nalanda,
Yes.
Moscow. And then let's come to Delhi now, which is also a city that you really love passionately.
Yes, see, Delhi is my beloved city, and I came to Delhi in 1997 to do graduation, and since then I have fallen in love with it, and I stayed. I studied then in Jawaharlal Nehru University, and afterwards I got my training here at the Foreign Service Institute, which was located in Chanakyapuri, and when I go out of India, I keep coming back to Delhi before I have to go out again. So somehow Delhi has been really a source of inspiration for me, and I mean, the city which I could love, and just 6 months ago when I was leaving again for Kathmandu, I as a kind of tribute to Delhi, and as an expression of my love to Delhi, I have put together a collection of poems.
The Seduction of Delhi.
It's titled Seduction of Delhi.
Tell me, what is the Seduction of Delhi?
Seduction of Delhi, I mean, there is something mysterious about Delhi which has attracted emperors, marauders, scholars, traders since millennia. Delhi is probably one of the most ancient cities in whole Asia,
And
the
the
world.
city that continues.
And city that continues.
Right.
I mean, city that never. City that never dies.
Right.
One city is gone, another city comes up, and it's happened since centuries. So something very mysterious about Delhi. I have tried to capture the mystery of Delhi through my poems.
And these are poems based loosely on 3 themes. You talk about the people, the
Yes.
monuments.
And people, places, and reflections.
Right.
So places are the 7 cities of Delhi. It begins with Lal Kot, or what is Qutub Minar today, and moves on as cities came up in the history of Delhi. So it moves to Siri Fort and then to Firozshah Kotla and Tughlaqabad and so on. Not necessarily in the historical order, but sort of some sort of order I have kept, and to Connaught Place and Terminal 3 now.
Okay.
So it moves the city. I have written my thoughts, my experiences, my dialogue, in fact, with the places.
Now, one very interesting poem in this collection is From the Eyes of a Flower Seller.
Yes, a flower girl, which we often meet when we stop at a
Do you remember the
traffic.
poem?
A bit of it. The flower girl says that I'm barely 16 and I am waiting for someone to come to me. I have picked up my flowers from the graves nearby, all kind of flowers, red, yellow, white, and I'm waiting for someone to come and pick up a bundle of the flower, but a cab driver comes and pulls me near, and I jerk back and my flowers get scattered, and I somehow again bring myself to order. And
now, what is most interesting about this poem is the fact that you've written it in first person.
Yes, these all poems are in first person actually in the whole collection. All the places, they speak for themselves. I don't speak for them.
No, but
so
a 16-year-old girl,
yes,
for you to transpose yourself in the place,
into her, how does she feel? And I tried to get into the bodies. I have also a poem called Security Guards and the Maids. So people who are kind of live in the silhouettes of Delhi. They are not visible, they are in the backyard, so I have tried to bring them forward. Security Guards, one of the poems, Security Guards, it says that you ask me how are you, but do you really want to know the answer?
The other expression that you have used besides words are paints.
Yes.
And you painted prolifically.
In Russia, yes.
In Russia, 60 odd paintings?
Yes, 60 odd. So my paintings were also of the same, come from the same stream of consciousness, and that consciousness that organically either we are individuals or or the planet. These are two organic wholes, and these kind of relationship between the individual and the planet, and the aspirations of the individuals for greater space beyond, greater identities beyond nation states. So all these themes I have carried in my paintings. My paintings are mostly symbolic. They use symbols to portray ideas. They use, they're also minimalist,
like your poetry,
like my poetry. So I think I have a style, and that is minimalism, where I try to paint in primary colors and try to say as much as I can through symbols.
Well, through your poetry, which is also very simple and easy to understand, as is your painting, I do hope that we get to see a lot more of your works. And thank you so much for being on our program.
It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
मैंने चुनी एक नहीं दो बेहतरीन खुशबुएं नई लक्स स्टार कलेक्शन सोप्स रेंज के लिए।
मुझे तो दोनों ही पसंद है। आपको ट्राई कीजिए नया लक्स स्टार कलेक्शन।
हम जल्दी वापस आ जाएंगे, ओके? मेरे जूते। अरे इसके हाथों ने तो कमाल कर दिया।
पर तुम्हारे हाथों का काम तो बढ़ा दिया।
नहीं माँ, इजी है। सर्फ एक्सेल इजी वॉश, ये तुरंत खुले और इसके 10 हाथों की शक्ति जिद्दी दाग आसानी से निकाले।
पापा को भी चाहिए 10 साथ।
सर्फ एक्सेल इजी वॉश।
वाओ, इतना निखार। क्या लगाया?
फेयर एंड लवली एंड फेयर एंड लवली।
फेयर एंड लवली तो मैं भी रोज लगाती हूँ।
दो डबल। अगर ऐसा निखार चाहिए तो पहले नया फेस वॉश एंड अपना क्रीम।
डबल एक्शन निखार के लिए पहले नया फेयर एंड लवली मल्टीविटामिन फेस वॉश, फिर मल्टीविटामिन क्रीम। डबल एक्शन निखार रोज।
मम्मी, मैं
तो टॉस करें हेड्स या टेल्स। अब खुले बालों का भी गिरना मना है, सिर्फ 1 रुपए में।
क्लिनिक प्लस शैम्पू में है मिल्क प्रोटीन फॉर्मूला जो बनाए बालों को मजबूत।
मम्मी, खुले बाल।
क्लिनिक प्लस, सिर्फ 1 रुपए में खुले बालों का गिरना मना है। रुक जाओ, देखो जरा मुझे देखो।
लवली, लवली, लवली,
लवली, लवली। अब फेयर एंड लवली ट्रीटमेंट से सब लगेंगी खुशी से और भी लवली। फेयर एंड लवली का वेरी 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 लवली ऑफर, हर सैशे में 10% एक्स्ट्रा। फेयर एंड लवली ट्रीटमेंट 10% एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर।
अब पाइए 3 ब्रीज साबुन के साथ 1 ब्रीज साबुन फ्री।